everyone. I'm Dr. Sujaya Banerjee, and I'm delighted to present to you another episode of In the Lead. This is season two of In the Lead, and in season two, we are excited to present another set of leaders who have created very distinctive impact within their industry, particularly in the very disruptive post COVID world. Neeraj Sanghi is the managing director and operating partner at Neo Asset Management Private Limited. He has extensive experience in development, finance, project management, and operation of projects in infrastructure and oil and gas industry. Neeraj completed his degree in electrical engineering in 1984, his MBA in 1988, and an MA in sustainable development in 2010. His foray into large projects started with SR, where, amongst other projects, he developed LNG receiving terminal project at Hazira, Gujarat. He spent 11 years with Total India developing three projects at Mumbai, at Vishakhapatnam, and at Hazira Port Subconcession deal at Ahmedabad. He worked with the SR Group as Chief Executive Officer of SR Concessions Limited, where he looked after SR's foray into infrastructure business, and as Chief Commercial Officer for SR Projects India Limited. At HC1, a KKR company, his stint saw significant value creation in road sector by streamlining of relationship with stakeholders, as well as by implementation of technology-oriented improvements in ETC energy efficiency on the road stretches. He also created a forum for joint advocacy by fund-based road operators named Highway Operators Association, or HOAI. He was the founder president of HOAI for many years. Presenting Neeraj Sanghi on In the Lead.
Thank you, Sujaya, for your kind introduction.
Thank you, Neeraj, for being here and joining us here today. So, I'm going to, first of all, besides welcoming you and thanking you for agreeing to do this conversation with us, I'm going to start by asking you, a couple of questions which I think would interest not just our viewers, but also people from your industry, which is try and tell us what has shaped your industry in the post-COVID world. What would you see as top two or three trends? What are the opportunities in this space, so that those who are not as large players as yours are also inspired by what it is that you see as opportunities emerging in your industry?
Okay. So in our industry, we basically we can think of industry at a holdco level or at a asset aggregation level and
Hmm.
at the asset level.
Hmm.
I think a lot has changed at the asset level itself in terms of technology, I would say.
Hmm.
You are all aware of FASTag, and one of the greatest revolution of our times was when December 29 FASTags came in, and by the time in 6 months we had about 80% people using FASTag. I think hats off to people. This
Yeah,
has
yeah.
meant a lot of efficiency into our operations. Our I think overall, I think industry has moved on for something better, and in future also government is expecting to invest a lot in the road sector in particular and infrastructure as a whole.
Right, right. So, and Neeraj, our show is about leadership and leadership style, and it impacts everything, including what you just spoke about right now. I think technology has been a big game changer, but I think what's also a game changer, especially in the post-COVID world, is how people lead and how they make decisions and how they work with other people and the rest of that. So we're going to try and probe some aspects of that, and I'm going to come to the very first one that stands out very distinctively about your own leadership. Now, I'm just going to go back to the time that we've all worked. I know we worked in SR together. We've known you through your highway concession days and the rest of that. I'm keen to be able to understand, how in an industry which is project management oriented and therefore high weightage on obedience, on alignment, and the rest of that, and all with good reason. All with good reason. How have you in an industry like that, basically I think A had the courage to basically experiment with a style that's very different, not command and control at all, very, very different, which is highly people centric, highly human centric, highly people oriented. And I'm very interested for you to be able to share your perspective with the viewers on, this whole human connections oriented leadership that you've actually sort of enabled and And I think it has helped your employees thrive. It has always stood out very distinctively in terms of not just the opportunity of the organization, but the culture that you've created, which has been very differentiated. And I think it would have taken some to decide with a lot of wisdom that this would be the preferred style in which you would prefer to lead people, as the head of the organization, as the CEO. In fact, groom other leaders to also become people oriented, people centric. So tell us some more about it. It's not like the other organizations aren't experimenting, there aren't more leaders who are doing this, but it stands out very distinctively for the industry in which you have chosen to lead like that. So tell us a bit about it. I think it's fascinating because there's so many companies and leaders struggling to be able to move away from the power centric, power distant, command and control styles of leading, and to try and lead in a manner that is more humane, more human, more benign, and yet get and deliver results. So tell us a bit more about that.
So let me tell you two things before I answer this question.
Yeah, yeah,
One is when I got recruited for this fund, IDFC Alternatives, and the fund was
yeah.
India Infrastructure Fund. And at that time, I had chosen not to be in employment, and I was like getting bored, so I thought I
Hmm.
will join somewhere again. And then I was called, and there were all interviews were over, and then there was an interview with a consultant, with a psychologist, and it
Okay.
was like as if I was going to be recruited for raw. It was a
Hmm.
very he was like straight faced all through, channeling something on his iPad all the time,
Yeah,
and I was like, what is this going on?
yeah,
And then obviously the idea was to extract whatever is my basic nature.
yeah.
Perhaps that was the idea. And at that point, I said, I want to be an absent leader.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
uh, and there was a lot of discussion, about 10-15 minutes we discussed after that.
Hmm.
And I thought, I am not getting this job. And
Okay.
when I was actually recruited by Darren, then I asked him after a few days, what did that consultant said?
Hmm.
And then he told me he had glowing reviews for you.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
essentially, when we say, so my whole idea is twofold. One is party and the work will happen. And
Hmm.
this is not here. I have so when I was in South Asia LPG, actually some of the foundation, since you have seen me in
Yeah.
SR and HC1, but some of the foundation happened in an earlier organization called South Asia LPG. So I used to have a party every 2-3 months, and normally contractors are taken as a somebody whom you can make them wait as much as possible.
Hmm.
You can do it, but I realized that that is not the way I am, and that is not the way you can deal with people.
Hmm.
And we used to have party where we used to invite them, and I think it used to work wonders.
Hmm.
When I came to HC1, I had another realization that in our kind of industry, in construction industry, still there is possibility of movement upwards or sideways for people. In our kind of in operations industry, you are sort of stuck where you are. Suppose you are
Hmm.
taken deputy manager, you will be manager, you will be senior manager, most probably doing little bit more value added work, but not too much unless you leave the job.
Hmm. Hmm.
Now, then I thought that what is the reason for a person to come to office every day? It
Hmm.
cannot be only money.
Yeah.
And then we thought, I mean, I didn't think of all this as a step by step, and this all occurred in my mind. And then
Yeah.
I sort of this. I mean, again, saying human centric, I would say that subtle connectivity with people is
Yes.
not between me and others, between each one of them
Yeah.
is what
Yeah.
I sought in the organization.
Yeah.
And I think we did some very, very micro experiments, you can say, very, very micro things which people can laugh at.
Yeah.
There's nothing about it. But they were highly successful. I mean, we had people knowing each other's family. And after 6-8 months, once my boss had come to one of those, or maybe about a year later, for a offsite in
Yeah.
Pollard we had done, and I reached late. I had some lecture somewhere, and I reached late, and he reached in the day. and he was just observing people.
Yeah.
And he said, Neeraj, this was not when I was running it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I realized that interfere less and give have a lot of although I hate the word engagement also, have
Yeah.
a lot of interactivity with people and give opportunity for the interactivity in simple ways, and
Yeah.
people respond to it, including me.
Yeah, yeah. So basically, what you're saying is that your style of leading is to be able to drive people through human connectedness, through basically connectedness, which means you're a big believer of social intelligence. And I know I'm giving you vocabulary around the work that you naturally do, but you're a huge believer in social intelligence, on human connectedness, on human connectivity, the opportunity for everyone to build rapport with each other. And when that natural connection has happened, you believe the work automatically happens.
Yeah, precisely. And this is not that we, again, as you yourself said, we didn't try to drill it down. We didn't
Yeah,
drive it. We did a few things which, for example, I give you one example. So there is something called, we call it gratitude, some 3G we call it, gratitude game. I am forgetting the
yeah.
first G. And this gratitude game was simple. We
Hmm.
were saying that each one, whomsoever you want to praise, you can
Hmm.
write a chit.
Hmm.
You can give a chit to each of your colleagues. You can
Yeah,
give one more. You can give two chits also to a
yeah,
colleague, but and to whomsoever you want to give.
yeah, yeah,
It's not that you have to give to everyone, and there is no winner loser. And
yeah, yeah,
mostly people respond to winning losing,
yeah, yeah.
and we said there is no winner loser. You just give a chit to whomsoever you want to give.
Hmm.
At the end of about 35, 36 people were there in the organization. We generated about, I think, 700 or 800 slips.
Wow.
Then we
Hmm.
asked people to choose 10 out of that,
Yeah.
and we displayed it in our conference room. I knew that we'll have to repaint the conference room, but doesn't matter. We displayed it for about a month,
Okay.
and some people who could bring they brought their spouses, or even one person
Yeah.
brought their children. So
Yeah.
kind of connectivity that creates is immense.
Yeah.
You don't have to
Yeah.
spend anything on it. It is
Yeah.
like, I mean, I don't know. I may sound emotional, but
Yeah.
this is these simple things. I don't know why organizations don't do, but I
Hmm.
was like, we were doing it all the time.
Yeah, yeah. So, and the truth is that there's so many people who silently admire each other, and they don't have a platform to tell the person that.
Yes.
And I think even from a social norm perspective, it can be misunderstood. So unless there is sometimes a platform of the kind that you're talking about, I would imagine that in the normal course, people may hesitate to reach out to someone at work and say that, hey, I admire you for this, or I really like you, and I like you because the other day when something happened, or when I observed something that you did, or I like the way you always kind of the way you interact with people during a meeting. I mean, they could be having any number of things to tell someone,
Yeah.
or of an occasion where they got helped, or an occasion where they got advice, or an occasion where somebody went out of their way to support them. They don't have a platform to be able to share this.
Exactly.
And
And where so they this was an occasion for them where they missed to say thank you.
yeah,
So
yeah,
many of the cards I read, and it was like, I didn't say you then, I'm
yeah.
telling you.
Yeah, yeah. And it feels great because you feel validated, you feel liked,
Yes.
and it creates like the it sort of creates the air, or creates the juice for collaboration.
Absolutely.
Because now you don't think the other is the other, or from some other function, or from somewhere else. Suddenly there's a human connectedness, and everyone's on the same side. So
You
so
know,
it's the yeah,
there was a time. When mostly people, when they say human connectedness,
yeah,
they just say, "Oh, he might not be performing, and
yeah.
therefore he's talking about human connectedness."
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
But in our case, what was fascinating was we did a whole deal of more than $500 million
yeah,
in COVID in
yeah,
4 months, where
yeah,
people towards the end of the deal for about week 10 days, they were deciding, oh,
yeah,
you work till 12 to 2, then you sleep for 5 hours, then
yeah,
you come in.
Yeah.
seamlessly. I don't
Yeah.
didn't have to, or any of the
Yeah.
bosses didn't have to say anything to anybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they were not even clear of the financial incentive at that time. Later, we
Yeah.
gave them sumptuous incentive as well, but
Yeah.
they were
Yeah.
not clear at that time.
Yeah.
But and it was fantastic.
Yeah, yeah. And you're so right that normally when you start talking about being nice or kind to each other in a workplace, it's seen as the resort of people who are otherwise lazy and don't want to contribute. So now they want to bring in something to do with human emotion and human connection and supporting each other and the rest of that. Whereas actually it's the elixir of collaboration. It's the elixir of
Absolutely.
feeling together, recognizing interdependence, and to what you're rightly alluding to, you're saying that you don't need to be supervised when people are doing this. You know what I mean? It's a natural human instinct, and you're simply creating the circumstances for that natural human instinct to flourish.
Absolutely. That's what
Yeah,
I'm saying.
yeah. So, I'm also told that notwithstanding that you're very benign and you believe in human connection, you believe in the power of the human being, you will make the effort yourself to be able to connect with people and all of that. But you will never hesitate to give them the feedback you need to give them. You will never hesitate to be able to tell them the tough story which nobody else is telling them. So tell us a bit about this, because it's a very interesting combination of very high level of human centricity that extends to caring enough for people to give them feedback.
Yes, and I have myself surprised at times when I have talked tough, and then next day I'm like a bit sheepish about it, and
Yeah,
I'm a bit afraid, and people are, if you see the intent, if there is an
yeah,
intent of not putting you down, and but it is strong or harsh at times,
yeah,
people get it. People get it.
yeah,
For example, I give you an example of a person who worked with me at that and in HC1, and now
yeah,
he's working with me in Neo.
yeah, yeah,
So this person, we were sort of developing. So there was one problem in one of our projects, and
yeah.
I was trying to understand why this traffic is falling. This
Hmm.
particular category of traffic is falling,
Hmm.
and I was constantly asking him, and I thought that apart from other things, he's making some mathematical errors.
Okay.
And 2 or 3 times I tried to tell him, like percentages are not added and mean is not taken, some of
Yeah,
those things.
yeah.
And maybe I was a bit harsh with him also.
Hmm.
And he sort of at that time he never showed me his frustration or anything.
Hmm.
Few days later he left,
Okay.
and I was like, it must be, I must have. And he kept
Yeah,
on telling me, no, sir, I'm not going because of that. He kept
yeah,
on
yeah,
telling me.
yeah.
Then he joined somewhere, and then this fund, Neo, they asked me to suggest a person. I
Hmm.
suggested his name.
Yes.
He's working with me now.
Okay.
When I
Okay.
joined him, when he was earlier, last year he joined, I joined him now. He was saying, not me, but my parents are saying, Neeraj has joined, so now you are in safe hands. So
Okay.
it is not like giving tough, a tough feedback is that tough.
Yeah.
People will get it if they feel they know it is for their betterment,
Yeah. Yeah.
organizational betterment, of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if they feel that you are putting them down and that too constantly,
Yeah.
then it's a different matter.
Right, right. But I do know that you don't hesitate to give tough feedback, and that, I think for you, you see it as a form of tough love, and I think they receive it like that, because it's a very interesting combination of being extremely benign and humane, and at the same time seeing the tough conversation as an extension of the same behavior. So, I want to take this conversation, Neeraj, to the very important practice that you institutionalize under your leadership of. I think it was called the Friday talks, or what were they called? You had very
Yes, yes, it
interesting
was
Fridays. Yeah,
correct.
Fridays where people came and shared their own life story. So any two or three people would
Yeah,
share their own life story. So tell us more about this. I think it's a beautiful
yeah,
practice, very well conceived and executed. And I think it delivered exactly the impact that you wanted within the
yeah.
organization. So tell us more about that.
So when COVID struck, then we thought two things. One is we have to do something to for the people to remain connected. We
Yeah.
didn't do that the deal will happen, and that was
Mm.
a side effect of
Yeah.
the connectivity. But we thought even deal, no deal, that we didn't know at
Yeah.
that time. Uh, so that was one aspect that we
Mm.
have to keep people connected. Second, we were a bit worried, maybe little earlier than others. Later, a lot of people followed about the mental health,
Mm.
and
Mm.
we had one or two people who were a bit vulnerable. We
Mm.
thought,
Mm.
and so what we started is actually we first started 2 days in a week. So one
Mm.
day was a general interaction, and one day was a storytelling. We called it
Mm.
storytelling in
Mm.
simple words. So storytelling was what that you are given an hour,
Mm.
and you articulate your story whichever way you want.
Mm.
And later, maybe people felt a bit shy to relate their very intricate things. But I can tell you, in the beginning, we started with a girl called Komal,
Yes.
and Komal was like she was absolutely true in the story, and we were all crying.
Mm.
And she related whatever she wanted to relate, and we were all crying, and we were, and then at least first five, six, seven stories, then Andy followed, and like that. Then maybe fifth or sixth was mine. We were like we went to the crux of our being, and
Mm.
that was the idea. So
Mm.
to me, I mean, I am not a psychologist,
Mm.
but it heals. If you tell a story, it heals. So
Mm.
I am a big follower of Brené Brown and her talk on
Mm.
vulnerability,
Mm. Mm.
and I feel that exposing your vulnerability, saying that I don't know this, all this is not a problem.
Mm. Mm.
Actually, adds human connection.
Yeah.
Post that, I am telling you, the connection was, so we were doing some things like 3G, some things like this. Post like that, connection was huge, great.
Mm. Mm.
And this went on for about an year, because people came, and we repeated a few, and then we stopped it. And because later, because we created a safe space where,
Mm.
so one person agreed that in his early days, in his heydays, he used to take
Mm.
drugs. Yeah, we
Okay.
didn't. One person agreed that they were. She was depressed. She had a
Mm.
medical depression. But there is nothing about it in terms of in work. We didn't take that into account. They were not.
Yeah, yeah. There were no consequences at work as a result of what you were sharing. Yeah.
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 So I think that way, those people, I do feel whenever I meet even these people, they say that they were healed to
Yeah.
some extent. I mean, this was not a very
Yeah.
very curated space, but still
Yeah.
they felt that non-judgmental space could heal them a little.
Right. So, I want to tell our viewers what this practice involved, right? So, every Friday, they would have two or three of their employees who would basically, and everyone would gather around in the office, and two or three of their employees would share their life story, where they came from, who their parents were, where they'd studied, where they'd grown up. What were the key experiences as they were growing up? What are some of the difficulties the family experienced? What are some of the challenges they've had before they've actually reached where they have in their lives? What do they continue perhaps struggling with? Maybe it's a health thing, maybe it's an elder in the family who's not well, or something or the other that that everyone typically sort of struggles with. And as they revealed and unveiled themselves to their colleagues, and obviously there was very significant self disclosure in the conversations they've had, but it was up to each person's discretion what they wanted to share and how much they wanted to share and so on. But I think what they ended up doing is humanizing every single person inside the organization. So these weren't just colleagues or accounts people or people in supply chain or people somewhere else. They were human beings, and they had real palpable stories. They had, they had successes, they had failures, they had anguishes, they had aspirations, they had challenges that they were experiencing. There'd been times in the family where there was job loss. There was time in the family where they struggled to come from one city to another. They've had challenges within the family, where there've been disputes. There've been legal challenges within the family because of which the children had to be displaced. I mean, real stories of human vulnerabilities and real stories of human anguish, of human struggle, and the rest. And I think it's amazing to be able to use self disclosure and self sharing as an important conduit of making a connection with the others, because suddenly then you're not just this name from accounts or this name from HR or this name from somewhere. You're a human being, and you've trusted the entire audience with what it is that you're sharing. And this is not one of the it's not a TED talk or a Josh talk or something. It's a real life narration by someone who may not be very conversant at being able to communicate and tell a story, but everyone would stay to hear that story and then feel inspired to tell theirs. And I think this is such a great way to build an organization. It's very unique. I'm sure that the viewers agree with me that this is not common. And it is, in fact, very uncommon. And they're an infrastructure company and they're actually investing time doing this. And I think it's fascinating to see how they had created automatic human connections with people. And, and there was a great sense of camaraderie, friendship, family, trust, and all of it that spills into the workplace. It spills into everyday collaboration. It spills into trusting the other person to do something. It spills into going the extra mile to help the other person. It spills into, I'll stay extra hours so long as this person is not an inconvenience because I know about their lives. So little things that they would actually do for each other as a result of knowing about each other's story. So I'm taking the effort on your behalf, Neeraj, to say a little more about what I observed from an outside in perspective, and that how rare and distinctive this practice is. In fact, most organizations struggle with having personal conversations. And then even if they do, it's at a very superficial level. And I'm delighted that you've all taken a risk. And I think you led the way by showing how to do this, which is to take the risk to tell your story and to see what comes out of that. And that, you actually feel so validated with all the love and the affection that you experience around you, that suddenly everyone's building each other as a person and building each other as a human being. And if we bring that part of the enterprise forward, then it won't be, these places will not be so draconian, so political, so painful, so toxic. They don't have to be any of these things if we actually bring the human side of enterprise alive. And I'm just so glad that, with so much of wisdom, you've led for people to even understand that you can be like that in a workplace. And I think that itself is what makes your story so distinctive. I'm going to move away from these treasure trove of stories that got generated under your leadership to talk a bit about vulnerability, because I know that you talk about vulnerability. We spoke about Brené Brown right now and the rest of that. The risk to be human, to enable building and manifesting EQ while you are all on very high IQ jobs. So tell us a bit about that and how vulnerability pans out in a workplace.
Yeah, I think to me, vulnerability and being human are almost
This,
two sides of the same coin. If we so most of the organizations and most of the times all of us are trying to show how knowledgeable, how competent, how skillful, how are we. But
yeah.
at the same time, there is a huge imposter syndrome lurking somewhere, and
Hmm.
these two are fighting all the time.
Hmm.
I'm not saying that we need to be. I'm not necessarily meek and modest and
Yeah.
all that, but at the same time, recognizing vulnerability in terms of what I am not
Yeah.
and what I cannot do or what I can do with the help, I think it helps a lot.
Hmm.
It helps everybody. And I
Yeah.
think we have, I mean, of course, this has been an example of sharing vulnerability, and as you so eloquently summed that up,
Hmm.
our storytelling exercise was one example of that. But there are many places I saw. For example, in
Hmm.
our work, we go to authority like NHI or
Yeah.
Ministry of Road Transport, and we can surely sometimes feel that, oh, how right we are and how wrong they are, because they
Yeah.
are babus and they don't understand this or that, and a little bit of vulnerability, a little bit of exercise in self abnegation helps you go a long way, not in
Yeah.
terms of leaving organizational objectives.
Yeah.
So I think that is what I would think, that vulnerability in terms of vulnerability and truth has are very something which are very close. So
Hmm.
if you're vulnerable, perhaps, or you accept vulnerability, you will be able to say things more truthfully, unless that vulnerability is transforming into meekness.
Yeah. So I think perhaps the word authenticity is what it is that you're calling out to or alluding to when you're saying that, when you're vulnerable, it will give you the courage to be authentic. So when
Yes.
you can be vulnerable, you can have the courage to be authentic. And I think I saw a lot of that in action through, your leadership. I'm keen to know how you got here, right? Which is how did you arrive at these insights, and how did you arrive at this wisdom? So tell me about your own coaching moment. Tell me about a time when you were younger as a professional working with other leaders, and what has been a distinctive coaching moment for you where you got coached on some behavior or on something by your significant leaders.
I think that way I have been sort of lucky to
Yeah.
have eminent reporting to eminent leaders, and dealing with them, and closely dealing with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So one of the leaders in SR, who was my boss, and he was troubled by an employee,
Hmm.
and he was like, and I knew it, and I was very close to him, and he was doing appraisals, and finally he said, "Oh, he troubled me. All that is true, but then I cannot spoil his, and I cannot be wrong in terms of professional judgment." And
Hmm.
this was an eye opener for me.
Hmm.
Most of us will sort of take appraisal as an opportunity to
To
take
fix
whatever,
someone.
to fix that one. And here this person was saying that. So I think there have been several such people who have been my bosses, and who have been, in one way or the other, who taught me that to take a little distance, at
Hmm.
least initially, will
Hmm.
take you a long way.
Hmm.
Then
Hmm.
I think and I have sort of, in that sense, I have been supremely lucky. Even, for example, there was a joint venture partner we had in HPCL, where
Hmm.
that is command and control at its peak.
Yeah.
And their director of finance, he used to, like, we never could go to his room. Matlab, we used to wait for 2 hours and this and that.
Hmm.
And towards the end, it was like we could talk anything, and we could he will offer us this and that. So I think if we take a little distance, and
Hmm.
we are willing to wait that while,
Yeah.
I think that is second thing I would say. I have said this many times, and that if you're proving all the time, that
Hmm.
means you're not proven.
Hmm.
So I think this whole idea of the industry, that I'll prove today, and tomorrow morning again I'll prove, and then I'll again prove. I think
Hmm.
this proving business takes
Hmm.
away vulnerability, because I have to prove all the time.
Hmm.
If you're proven, you can be proven with vulnerability. But if you're proving, it is difficult to be vulnerable at that time.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I think I have chosen that, whatever, whether proven in an ultimate sense or not, I am proven, whatever, to whatever extent I am proven. And I
Right.
think if we believe that, then perhaps
Yeah.
it, we
Yeah.
will not try to go whole
Yes.
hog, and we'll be
Yeah.
willing to wait a little.
Yeah. And I think you're alluding to the power of remaining grounded and the power of being able to remain authentic, even as with whatever effort it is that you're making. You don't need to have to pretend. You don't need to, everything doesn't have to be superficial. Your evaluations, for example, in your insight, is not a time to fix people. It's not a time to be able to settle your scores with people. And that
Yes.
even when you have the power and you don't use it, is your greatness as a leader.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Yes.
he had the power. If he wanted, he could have put whatever he wanted down on that. And he did. And he said that I'm taking a distance, and which means that I'm not going to get biased by whatever experiences I may have had on an interpersonal level, which also requires a conversation, which I think I've had most of them through the year. Now, when we look at the performance, we look at the performance and figure what it is that is the fairest way in which we can assess this individual. And
So
that
I also, sorry.
the job of leadership, in a way, Neeraj, is to be able to take that higher ground, And I'm saying, I think that is what you're saying you found so impressive in what you saw your own manager do.
So
And
I would say that, so this is like you pointed an earlier contradiction. This is also slightly contradictory because I also believe in a lot of strength. Vulnerability does not mean weakness. So
yeah,
I,
yeah,
for example, I am totally. I have only one poem I remember from the childhood, one line of
okay,
that,
yeah,
and that is about absolute strength. This is
mm,
Dinkar's poem. He says, "क्षमा शोभती उस भुजंग को जिसके पास गरल हो, उसका क्या
mm,
हो जो दीनहीन विषहीन विनीत सरल हो." मतलब
mm,
only that snake can
yeah,
pardon who
yeah,
has strength.
yeah,
But strength is not against vulnerability.
yeah,
Strength
yeah.
and vulnerability actually go together, because
Yeah.
if you have strength, if you have an inherent strength, then only you will be willing to vulnerable.
Yeah, yeah, so true. That actually, because you're so strong and courageous, you can be yourself. Because you're strong and courageous, you don't mind saying that you don't know something, because you don't discount yourself the minute you say that.
Correct.
And so, yeah, it takes a lot of strength to be vulnerable, and vulnerable sounds like a weak word, which is not true. And I'm glad we're having this conversation. I hope it leads to a lot of reflection, that showing vulnerability is not showing weakness, and it's not showing you up as a weakling. In fact, it shows you up as someone so strong.
Right.
So, yeah, so I think with that, I want to move on to ask you if there is advice you would like to give other entrepreneurs, people who are running startups, those who may be doing jobs directly in your industry, associated with your industry. What advice would you like to give them?
See, for the I would distinguish between employees and startups.
Yeah,
So I think the first thing which is true for everybody, but
yeah,
more so for startups, I would think, is to know where you stand.
hmm,
I think more than often what I have noticed, that startups start at a place. I have this excellent product. I
hmm,
have this person who is an expert. I
hmm,
have, but what is most important is what is market?
hmm,
Where do you stand?
yeah,
What are the alternative products? What is the price? So I think
hmm,
most of the times we are saying I have the best product in the market, therefore it will sell.
hmm,
And I think it doesn't happen like that.
hmm, hmm,
It doesn't happen like that for various reasons, but I think most importantly, uh, there is a certain amount of connect required with customers, and there will be a few customers which I call
hmm,
innovators will always
hmm,
be willing to come to you,
hmm,
but others will take time, and you have to talk to them, and to say that I
hmm,
have the best product. How do they know?
yeah, yeah,
So I think that is to whatever I have seen with startups. I think the biggest difficulty is that they don't stand where they. Second thing which I have noticed with entrepreneurs, that entrepreneurs, so when there is something entrepreneurial, there
hmm,
are two parts to it.
hmm,
I think a small part in in seeing, but in mind it is a big part, is the entrepreneurship itself.
hmm,
But
hmm,
but as other, and a small part in actual, in seeing, in doing, but in seeing a big part is managerial.
hmm,
So an entrepreneur has to have both entrepreneurial skills
hmm,
and managerial skills. Now, what I have
hmm,
many times seen, that entrepreneurs, some managers become entrepreneurs because they have hit upon a good product,
hmm, hmm,
but they have to learn to be entrepreneurs and
hmm,
leave the managerial things to managers till the
hmm,
managers join them. They have to do it themselves. But
yeah,
then when the manager, so this whole the gamut of entrepreneurship, the problem is entrepreneurial and managerial things have to be segregated, and
hmm,
then they have to be dealt correctly either by entrepreneur himself or finding a manager who is outside. And
right,
entrepreneur cannot be solely the manager, which mistake also some entrepreneurs are doing, which they are saying I
hmm,
will do absolutely logically, doesn't work, because you have to pivot many
hmm,
times.
Hmm. So, to your point, just for the sake of our viewers, how are you distinguishing the two jobs? What is the entrepreneur doing which is separate from what the manager is doing?
So entrepreneur is in very simple terms. That's why I'm saying his thought process has to be very large, but his
Yeah.
doing is very small.
Okay.
Entrepreneur has to set the direction of the company or the organization.
All
He
right.
is he will, for example, decide what is the product,
Hmm.
where he will sell it. He will decide the strategy. He will decide how to raise funds, whether to
Hmm.
raise funds, whether not to raise funds.
Hmm.
Once he has decided all this, then the
Hmm.
manager has to implement all this. Finance
Right.
manager will try to raise the funds. Marketing manager will try to sell. Production manager will try to. Now, if he tries to take over these people's job, entrepreneur,
Yeah. Yeah.
he should have a little knowledge like any CEO, but he need
Yeah.
not have more than 20-30% knowledge of this. So this is the two distinct parts of the entrepreneurial journey.
Right.
Mostly I've seen that entrepreneurs either are managers themselves or they
Hmm.
miss the manager part totally, and which is
Right.
the of the
Right. Right. So you're basically alluding to that an entrepreneur should stay at the strategic end, look at the
yes.
other requirements strategically for the organization to succeed, give it direction, give the managers and the other teams directions for execution, and be the first to call out a pivot so that he's able to redirect people at next levels, but know where the boundary is and not start becoming the manager themselves. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But it is always very difficult in the initial stages. Initial
Yeah.
stages, he has to be both. But whenever
Yeah.
he gets the opportunity to not be both, he should
Yeah.
take the opportunity to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I think this also alludes to the idea that you will find the right kind of talent to do the managerial part of the business. And, so I think oftentimes the challenge is that you don't find that other team to be able to support the execution. And that's part of the reason why you can overlap both the roles. But I do see the merit in what it is that you're alluding to, so that the entrepreneur remains the entrepreneur by constantly giving the space direction, giving direction to the execution, supporting the rest of the teams, but not doing their jobs. Also, not considering himself the experts in their jobs.
Yes.
And to leaving the bandwidth open to be able to pivot again, to be able to, look at other opportunities that the organization may have, maybe raise funds, whatever it is that the organization is going to have, or be required to do to be able to scale up. And you're saying that's where the entrepreneur should stay. And the big problem with startups is that the entrepreneur, rather than focusing on the entrepreneurial element to why they started their business, start becoming the managers. And
Yes.
that's where the plot is lost. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Tell me finally, what would you say to people who are starting their careers in 2024? What should those who are starting their careers this year, what should they be focusing on? And I know you're from a B school yourself, and you've been through this rigor before. What should you consider if you're starting your career in 2024?
Yeah. So if I had to give a one word answer, then I would say wait. But
Wait.
let me explain. So
Yeah.
because
Okay.
the problem is that when we pass out from B school or even engineering college, then so what have we studied? When we pass out from engineering college, from management school, we have studied about what CEO does. We
Hmm.
have never studied what a management trainee does.
Yeah.
That no business school teaches you. They
Yeah.
teach you what a CEO does.
Hmm.
Now there is a 15 to 20 years, if not more, gap
Yeah.
between you being a management trainee to you being a CEO.
Yeah.
So, how do you apply the knowledge, or let's say strategy? So, you
Hmm.
have gone through multi product strategy, this strategy, that strategy. When you are joining a job, you will not even most probably not get a glimpse of those strategies, at least initial 2 3 years.
Yeah.
So now, so that's the period most people are like, what am I doing? This is not what I studied.
Yeah.
This is where am I? I'm doing photocopying. Okay, now that has reduced a little, but in
Yeah.
our times, I mean, most of the management trainees were meant to be photocopying and sending faxes. But that this is what is my big problem with organizations is this is even today I had a lunch with some people. How do you assess where do you stand? How do you
Yeah.
assess whether this you are getting enough knowledge, how do you feel confident that whether you feel that you're doing enough or not will be enough in future?
Yeah.
This is something, this is a problem which will remain, and our
Yeah.
B schools are quite ill-equipped actually for now. Some
Hmm.
of the trends in US, for example, have changed. For example, you might be aware that Talban Shah are giving that course in happiness, which was in Guinness Book of World Record. There were
Hmm.
900 people joined that course. So this
Hmm.
Stanford has a similar course called Touchy Feely.
Hmm.
So Yale has a course. So now these the the behavioral part being, or emotional quotient being at the front of the job does not
Yes.
come naturally to a youngster.
Okay. Okay.
That is the and you can't tell him, because the point is, and I don't feel wrong if they say, okay, I have to earn more, I have to move up in life. How do they correlate the short term with the long term?
Hmm.
To me, a short term, unfortunately or fortunately, we are all in short term, but and a long term is also happening in short term, but long term is distinct from short term.
Okay.
If I take my career also, I think what I was in short term in first 5 years or 10 years, I'm very, very completely different.
Hmm.
How does one believe that he will or she will be so different today, starting a job where he or she is not getting a clue of how it connects with the whole or the big whole?
Hmm.
Then I will say, wait, it will all connect, it will
Hmm.
eventually connect. Now
Hmm.
the next question will be, how long I wait? I don't have an answer for that.
Yeah.
To that, I think the best will be to connect. If that early age people, if they have a mentor, if they have a coach, if they have a friend who is a little elder, they will be able to gauge and tell them that, okay, this is an idea where you can, now you have spent 3 years and now you can move on. But this whole idea of moving every year or every 2 years, so for example, in my batch, the most successful person in my batch of FMS is Rohit Java. He is
Hmm.
the CEO of Hindustan Unilever today. He
Yes.
did not move a job. He
Hmm.
has he joined from campus. He is still in Hindustan Liver.
Hmm.
So I mean, for people to believe that changing jobs possible, I'm not
Yeah.
denying that. But I'm
Yeah.
saying, uh, for most of us, to develop EQ, we'll have to learn to wait and not
Hmm.
react. And it is extremely counterintuitive for the youngsters, but still,
Yeah.
if they do it, it will benefit them.
Right, right. All right. So your wait is just basically wait. Wait for your strengths to emerge. Wait for the environment to emerge. Wait for the opportunities to emerge. Wait for you to be able to shine. Wait for you to know what your mojo really is. Wait for all that. Yeah. Don't be in a hurry to be able to jump to conclusions. And I think that's useful, very useful advice. So your advice to young people who are starting their careers is just one word, which is wait.
Yes.
Yes, yes. All right, super stuff. I think it's been so nice talking to you, Neeraj. You are very inspiring while you're being just yourself. And I think that is really the hallmark of great leadership. And so thank you for being here and good luck with the new assignment. And,
Thank you.
I'm very sure that the viewers are taking away so much from this very rich conversation. And thank you for agreeing to share all your nuggets with so many people here and inspiring them to their own leadership. So, thank you, Neeraj, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you. Thank you, Sujya.